year's budget. These reductions that are part of this budget will result in the potential loss of over 30 positions K through 12. The school committee is asking the Lisbon citizens to raise an additional $262,598 locally so that we can continue to offer the existing programs that we currently have and not to reduce any additional staff. The budget priorities that we had set as a school department, the one piece that you will see, we wanted to present a fiscally responsible budget. That includes limiting the amount of money that needs to be raised locally. These are terms of the local contribution, the total budget. I want to be clear and define that for you because I know there's some confusion on the numbers. The proposed local contribution in this budget is $5,177,171. Our total general budget is now $13,896,342. Our other budget priority is to continue to address the NEAS concerns. We have a facilities committee and we've developed both short and long-term building renovations at the high school. One of the concerns with our budget that we've been focused on is that if there are any other changes in our programming, we will need to report those to NEAS. We will need to NEAS any of the changes that occur. The proposed budget that we have would only require us to report the number of staff that have been reduced and the changes in our graduation requirements. Our top priority, however, is to maintain existing programs and our progress. We have used the essential programs and services model extensively in developing this budget. We have decreased the amount above our EPS by over $270,000, and we want to also continue to demonstrate student progress, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. In the warrant articles, even though there is $1.1 million in reduction, I did want to point out that there were some areas that we did increase in our that we did have to increase. One is in adult education. We moved the director from 4/5 to full-time, anticipating that we would have an alternative ed program or possibly some other student services to help reduce our dropout rates. We also increased our facilities grounds line. There was $15,000 that was cut from there. One of the concerns that a lot of the community members have said just in the year that I've been in superintendent is that the amount of money that we're spending on our facilities and grounds is not adequate. So we did add that money back into our budget. You will see an increase in nutrition. That was based on contract. We had to move some money around for dues and fees. One of the larger increases was under the substitute lines. That was an area that had been reduced over the years, but anybody working in the schools this year realized that we were pulling our ed techs throughout the year to cover classes, to save positions. People who we were paying to be ed techs to support children were unable to do that this year. So we did look at what the actuals were and average those out over the last few years, and we did need to increase that particular line. The gifted and talented, it was a transfer. It moved from special education to general education. And in co-curricular, we did you'll see some changes. That was a result of a couple of things. By looking at our EPS model, we were able to, when we moved to assistant principals, athletic directors, we were able to reduce our EPS numbers. And we also transferred the cost of secretaries into from regular instruction, or not regular instruction, but in administration into co-curricular. So there was an increase in those lines, but it addressed some issues or areas that we had under our EPS model under secretaries and administration. One of the, on the next slide, what I have is a graph of the 10-year, the local contribution history here in Lisbon. As you can see, the local contribution has shown, well, with the exception of this year, has shown a decline. An example will be, the numbers are somewhat hard to see up here on the screen, but in 2001, our local contribution was $4,931,447, and in 2009, it was $5,031,074. So we have, there's been an increase, but it's also gone as high. If you look at those numbers, it did spike quite a bit. A lot of that's related to state subsidy. The less state subsidy you get, the more local contribution that you're forced to put on the taxpayer, or put towards the taxpayers. And I will explain that a little bit more in the presentation. As for the local contribution, last year the state contributed $8,879,679. Locally, you needed to raise $4,914,573. This year, or proposed, the numbers that we have for next year, the state's contribution is now $8,216,245, which is a decrease of $663,434 in state subsidy. One of the things, if you look at the subsidy report, you will see a transition amount. That amount is the result of the state not meeting the obligation of the 55% funding that they are, by law, we're supposed to cover. So that's an additional $283,002 that needs to be raised locally. The local contribution for next year's budget is an increase to $5,177,171, which is the proposed increase that we were asking for of $262,598. The impact areas in January, the LEA was notified that we would be facing significant cuts. Areas that we have looked at, there have been no final decisions. I know some people have asked where those impact areas or where those positions coming from. We have, by contract, we do have a reduction in force language that we will need to follow. What we have done is, when we started this budget process, I believe we were probably closer to having a $400,000 gap. Since then, the state has increased the amount of funding that they would be providing to us. We also have had, we're obviously hoping that we'll hear additional news between now and June. I'm not sure that that's going to happen. I haven't heard that there would be any more increases in state subsidy, but we're always hopeful. We traditionally have staff members who either take other positions or retire or leave the district. And so one of the things that we've been very careful of is we're waiting until we get feedback on our budget first and foremost, but we're also waiting to see if there's any other pieces that might fall into place so that we can retain as many of the current employees that we have. In these impact areas, we'd be looking at increasing our classroom sizes. We'd have to do that through reductions in K through 12 staff, ed techs, potentially in student services, areas that, looking at the EPS formula that we need to look at closely is under guidance and social work, nurses, special education, the student resource officers, volunteer coordinator. Those are all examples of student services. We also have visual performing arts, foreign language. Those are areas that we would have to look at, and including custodian and maintenance. One of the concerns that we have is that if we have to reduce additional programs, and believe me, when we put together a budget with this amount of reductions, the programming, even though we hope all the programs that we have in place, we're hoping, we feel we can offer those programs. The problem is that they're not going to be like they were, and people are going to have concerns about that. But if we feel that if we have to go any deeper, then we're going to lose these programs, and as a result, we're going to impact the programming at all our schools. Recently, the state released a school achievement and progress list that was on March 30th, 2010. It's available online. One of the things that we're proud of is that all three schools have made progress over the last 3 years. The state median percentage was 4.18%. LCS had 20.2% or 20.20%, which was the 12th highest percent in the state. The middle school was at 10.74%, which was about 170, I believe. And this is out of 557 schools. And the high school was 7.64%, which was roughly, I think, around it was probably 60 or so. I don't have the exact number, but it was under the 200, before 200, around 180, 190. I think actually the middle school was 106 and the high school was like 180. The concern, and I've made this announcement both at school committee meetings and at the town council meeting. The concern is that our actual, the average over the last 3 years, at least at the high school, is a concern. At the community school, we're showing the average the last 3 years has been 56.88%, with last year being 66.2% of students meeting or exceeding in math and reading. At the middle school, it was 57.01%, with 64.1% meeting or exceeding last year in math and reading. At the high school, it's 37.4%, with 40.68% of the students meeting or exceeding. My concern is that looking at all of the new federal money that you'll see, the Race to the Top application that you're going to be reading a lot about because they're really pushing forward with that. They are planning on they identified 10 schools in the state as the lower achieving schools. Our high schools showed, adequate progress. However, there were only 5 high schools in the entire state that met or exceeded in math and reading. And the rest of the high schools are really close to the target area that identified the 10 other schools. And I'm concerned that if we don't continue to show progress, one poor test year and the high school scores would be impacted, and we'd be put in a position where we would potentially be identified as a low achieving school. So we are hoping that through our budget that we would be able to provide adequate programming for our students. We are coming to the community. There was a town council that put together a survey, and the community responded to obviously not increase classroom sizes. They didn't want to reduce student services. They didn't want to reduce visual performing arts courses, and they slightly approved a raise in local taxes. We are hoping, we understand, nobody on the school committee wants to increase classroom sizes or reduce any of the services. However, under the economic situation, we're in a tough spot. And I feel that the Lisbon School Department is actually addressing what you're going to hear in the news as the cliff, which is next year, and that's when federal stimulus money runs out. That is, I think Lisbon School Department is addressing that now. One of the things I will say for those that may have questions about stimulus money is we have, as a school committee, have focused using the stimulus money to make improvements to the high school, and so to address the NEAS concerns, but we are not in a position where we're using that money for positions, because what's going to happen next year is a lot of schools are going to, when that money ends, and that funding goes away, a lot of schools are going to be faced with trying to deal with these types of cuts. So I think that we are trying to address that now and trying to do the best we can, but these are huge cuts. I've been here 8 years, and I can't remember a time when we had more than maybe 300,000, 400,000. So it's definitely very challenging and stressful on everybody. The proposal that we have does have a potential impact on taxes. The mill rate right now, one mill is $367,000. Local funding increase at $262,598 would result in 72 cents per $1,000 of household per $1,000, which would be the equivalent of $71.55 per 100,000 of your house or your land property value. In summary, the Lisbon School Department is facing very difficult budget decisions. Understanding the economic situation, we have prepared a budget that we feel still allows us to provide an adequate education to our students. Even with over $1.1 million in reductions, we are forced to ask the Lisbon taxpayers to raise an additional amount of $262,598. We understand the impact this will have on the local tax rate, but we need to emphasize that further reductions would result in the loss of entire programs and services. This would almost certainly have a negative impact on the children in Lisbon, and we have been and are here tonight asking for your support of Town Council, Budget Advisory, and the citizens of Lisbon.
Thank you, Rick. Mr. Eldridge?
Good evening. Mine's a little bit shorter than that, and we'll highlight some of the areas. This year, and we compare it to last year, we've seen a decrease in revenue, our projections. Last year, we had about $2.7 million we expected. This year, we're only seeing about a $2.6 million increase in revenue. It's down $113,000 from last year. Statewide, we are seeing a revenue shortfall from the state revenue sharing of approximately $290,000, and that's less than what we had last year, but we seem to, hopefully we can weather it. Our expense, again, has gone up $153,000 from last year. The expense increases, these are the real highlights of what we are confronted with. We have seen our increase in our insurance lines go up over $100,000. Our debt service is $228,559 over last year. That has to do with some of the bond initiatives that the people approved. We've seen our hydrant fees go up this year, $59,000 higher than they were, and our county tax has gone up $9,000. So we've seen an increase in our expenses of things that we don't have any control over, really, is $396,852. The capital improvement projects, we've narrowed them down to things that we really need to purchase this year. These are all lease projects, lease purchase. Solid waste, we need to replace a container. It's falling apart. It's rusted out. The transfer station has waited since I've been here. They keep putting it off because we can't afford it. We can't afford to not replace it this year. We're also in a position where we need to trade in our bucket loader, and with that we're purchasing a 4-in-1 bucket, and that again is another capital item that has been requested before I got here, and this year we really do need to replace it before it starts costing us more money. And again, last year the normal police capital budget was to replace 3 cars, and last year we only did 2, trying to keep our costs down, and we really need to put this new one on the road. Last year we replaced 2 transmissions in 2 of our older vehicles, so they're starting to cost us money. And again, we're trying to stay with the fire department capital budget. They put $75,000 every year aside, and again, this will be the second year where we've only put aside $50,000. And again, department heads, we started off with our request at $523,000 approximately. What we were looking for increases to maintain our level of service. We have brought that back down to $153,000. These are the increases that you see. We've taken out a number of items, and staff has worked very, very hard to cut back on things that they think we can do without. Where we're making some other cuts is in personnel. We have positions that we are not filling. We have 2 full-time positions that are, one is empty and one will be empty at the end of the year. We're not filling those. And we have 3 part-time positions that we're not filling at the end of the year. Our capital projects, we removed the Public Works addition, even though it's desperately needed for air quality and issues, handicap accessibility. We took that off our plate. The council has requested that we remove the reval. We have taken that off. We've seen decreases throughout everybody's budgets in membership, supplies, professional development, and contracted services. The goal was to maintain the level of service if we can, and reasons why we've seen an increase in our call for service in the police department. The calls in the fire department have increased over last year. We have public works, we have infrastructure needs that we can't delay on. The library is our fastest growing department within the community, driven by the economy. People are going to the library, they're very, very busy. In the town office, we're seeing a loss of staffing as well. So people have to do with what we have for staff the same amount of work. And the solid waste is a very busy place, and we're down 1 person there currently, and they're seeing the impact that they're going to have for next year without that extra staff person. And again, these are the numbers on what 1 mil would cost. And again, it varies depending upon what we gain for new value, stuff that we're putting in from after April or before April 1st. We do gain a little bit every year, so that will vary when it comes to tax commitment time. And that's what I have.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, with those presentations under our belt, I'd like to open up questioning for the school committee budget. No questions on the school committee budget?
My name's Tom Berry. I live in Lisbon Falls. This will be directed at Superintendent Green. What's the enrollment for this budget of 2010?
I-
Could you bring the mic up a little bit, please? It's just not-
That better?
Yeah.
All right. What's the enrollment for this 2010 budget?
The projected enrollment
Yeah.
is roughly, I think, 1,250 students.
Okay. As the information that I've been able to find, and I suggest all go to it, would be mainopengov.org.
Mm-hmm.
For the 2009, with an enrollment of 1,331, your budget was almost $14 million.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry. I thought you
Your
said
budget was almost $14 million.
correct.
Okay. So now we've got less students, and you still have that budget?
We didn't lose. We roughly had 1,200 students this year as well. Probably 1,260.
No,
You know,
a reduction
1,250,
of- That's a reduction
1,260.
of 100 students.
Yeah, that's not accurate.
Okay.
There's been a change in how the state has been recording students over the last 3 years. We noticed this year when we did our
So
town.
was your enrollment last year 1,300 students, roughly?
No, it was. We haven't gained
Where
any,
could
and we
I
haven't
get this
lost a
figure
lot.
That's correct.
What's that?
Where do you suggest I get this figure that would be correct?
You can ask us.
It's like the fox in the hen house.
Well, no, our April 1st and our October and our April 1st counts
Well,
just
long
went
story
out
short, I'm trying to figure out where you're getting your reduction in your budget.
from last year's overall, from total
What
budget.
was your budget for last year?
Uh,
Just shy of 14 million, if I don't miss my guess.
It was actually, last year's budget was, yeah, I'll pull it up. It's on, I'm trying to figure out which slide it is so you can see it. 14.2. Oh, it's on the, yep. if you look on your first page of the handout of the school,
Yeah.
you'll see that the, right at the bottom where it says other instruction, the total, total budget, excluding adult education, was $14,212,519, and this year it will be the $13,393,416.
Now,
That's on the revenue
Where do you
sheet.
derive your figures from, so I can go to the right place? Other
If
than
you have that
yourself.
handout, the warrant articles.
No,
and-
other than yourself.
What's
I mean,
that?
This is recorded at the main government site, so
Mm-hmm.
what site are you getting your figures from? That's all I want to know.
These are what we have to vote on, the warrant articles
But
and
where are
the.
they coming from?
Yeah, this is our budget. This is what you use, this is what the town of Lisbon votes on every
So
year.
the state side is wrong and yours is correct?
The
is you're
the
saying?
enrollment, they have changed their enrollment, as I said earlier. They changed how they record enrollment. Before, I believe, any student who was eligible to attend the Lisbon School Department was counted as part of their enrollment, and they changed that. That is something that we noticed in the town report. If you look at the town report, last year and the years previous, it looks like we've lost a lot of students, but it was because the way that we have to report them to the state has changed over the last few years. But I can give you actual numbers of what we have for April 1st is the date that we just submitted our April 1st count.
So,
But the numbers that we've had all throughout the year have been, should be relatively accurate or exactly
yeah.
what we have had.
So you report the students that you're enrolled to the state in order
To
to
the state.
receive the state money?
Correct.
Okay. What agency do you send that to? Because I'm...
The Department of Ed.
Department of Ed?
Yep.
All right. 'Cause I'll try to find that website, but the websites I have show enrollment going down and the monies received per student going up every year.
We just completed, as part of our renovation project of the high school, we just had an enrollment study done by a private organization. Now, the numbers, what they figured for us was there is going to be a decrease in the amount of buildings and houses that are built here in Lisbon. There is, if I remember correctly, there was a spike in the birth rate over the last few years, but they said that would go down. Numbers K through 8 should remain pretty consistent with what we have now, but they did identify that there could be potentially a decrease in high school enrollment.
Because the trend I see is basically 2008, the figures I get are 1,400. 2009 is 1,300. It seems to be going down, and the monies received per student keeps going up.
I don't have the figures of what it costs per student, but I know that our cost per student is not like outrageous or way above anybody else's. As a matter of fact, I believe it's roughly around, or it was the last time I saw, was roughly a little over $8,000, which was under the state average.
As the figure I'm getting is $10,500 for last year per student.
No, that's not accurate.
Not accurate to your figures. I'm going to try to find this education site you're talking about, but
The-
everything
yeah.
that I see is things going down, price per student going up.
Mhm.
Everything I see. And as far as the survey that you've done, nobody wants to give up anything. But I got news for you. There's less money out there. There's less jobs out there. We're going to have to increase classes, do double sessions in the schools or something. Because I just don't see where we're paying out more and more and more. I live within a budget. You guys ought to, too.
Good evening. Mr. Green, I'm a little confused, and I'm hoping you're going to straighten me out here.
You Suck on it. That mic's not.
It's okay, nobody really wants to hear this question anyways. You stated in the beginning of your proposal that there was a loss of $1,105,000.
One
Yeah.
million, 100, yeah, compared, that was based on what it would cost if we were to open up school in August, as is. The difference, it actually was 1.4 million.
So there really isn't a loss of $1.4 million. That was $1.4 million based on what you proposed you wanted for a budget?
No, it was it's what we would what would it be to operate the system as is with the amount of staff, increases in salaries, increases in fuel and cost. There wasn't any, so that, it was our original budget, and that's where we started from.
So we didn't actually lose $1 million in funding from the state.
No, it was six, if you look at the first sheet, I'm sorry, the second sheet, you'll see it was $663,434 that we lost, and then we have to, and then the increase to the town is right below that. So the actual money that we decreased in state funding was $663,434. When you add in the increases of operating and just general operation costs, salaries, things like that, that's where you get the additional amount.
And what is the salary increase for this year?
I'm sorry?
What is the salary increase for this
Percentage
year?
or the total?
Percentage.
It's 1.75 for teachers, 1% for administrators. Support staff, I believe, was 0%.
Thank you.
Any additional questions on the school budget? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the municipal budget. Is that school? Is that raising your hand for the school? Okay.
So I would like to make a comment on the arts and the theater program. I have been at Lisbon High School for 2 years, and this is my senior year. I recently moved here from Maryland, and during my 2 years, I took 3 art classes, 2 art foundations, and studio art with Miss Olette, and this year I'm taking pottery with Mrs. Fox. I was also involved in the drama club, and all these classes and the drama club, all this experience has made my 2 years worthwhile. And I would hate to see any major adjustments to those programs. These 2 teachers have made an impact on my life and my future, and they go above and beyond when it comes to educating their students and make learning enjoyable. They are caring and compassionate, and while being caring and compassionate, they still keep order and a respectful relationship with their students. Miss Olette and Miss Fox also put in extra time with extracurricular activities such as the annual art show, which is coming up, the drama club, and the art club. When being involved in all these clubs, I witnessed the dedication Miss Fox had put into the drama club. She has sacrificed countless hours that could have easily been spent with her family, whether she was constructing or painting backgrounds, searching high and low for our costumes on a limited budget, or helping us get that last line just right. Ms. Fox gave us 100% every second, every day, every minute. Although I have only been a student with her for a year, I can see that she has a heart of gold, and she will do anything to make sure that the students she has succeed in life. So when you eventually sit down and do your budget, I just want you to consider this, and these teachers have made such an impact on me in my 2 years, and imagine what they could make in 3 or 4. Thank you.
We are well aware of the impact that all of our staff have on our community and students. I have a pile of letters. I have met with people. I've called people, been contacted by phone. Unfortunately, these are tough times, and we do have to make reductions. There's clear language when it comes to personnel that is outlined in our contract. But again, we haven't made any decisions. We've put everything on the table. In the past, there's been decisions that were made, different programs and stuff. have been identified, and we're trying to hope and see if things will change, and we're looking for feedback from the community, obviously from town council and budget advisory on where we need to go from here. But no decision will be easy. We're going to be losing great staff, and it's very unfortunate, but Lisbon is not the only school system that's dealing with this. So I do appreciate your kind words and support. We understand that, and we're going to do the best job we can.
Any additional questions on the school committee budget? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move to the municipal side. I think everybody has a handout. If not, it was out back. On the front, there's a brief summary, which basically Steve went through in his presentation. On the back side is a listing of all the departments, what the budget was last year, what the current proposed budget is that the council is working with, the difference between the two budgets, and the increase or decrease in a percentage. There also was a handout that is double-sided, which tries to explain each department, the areas, and a brief description of what's taking place within that budget. So I would like to go through if there's any questions in the elected officials' budget. Are there any questions on the town manager's budget? Any questions on contingency? Insurance? Legal? Retirement? Social Security? Technology? Town buildings? Could you come to the microphone, please, Gordon?
Last year, we spent $55,000 on the Public Works Garage to repoint it and to seal it up, so we don't have it in this year's budget.
Is there anything else that was asked for that is not being
We had originally put in $75,000 for the Public Works addition to remedy some of the handicap accessibility, air quality issues, and things like that. We took that out of this budget.
Questions on assessing? Could you come to the microphone, please?
Well, she's posing the exact same question, Michelle Trammell.
You need to speak up a little bit, Michelle.
I haven't asked it yet. Mrs. Wells just posed the question that I exactly have for you. The assessing budget has a 15% increase. I noticed on the one line, is it still going from 30 to 40 hours a week?
Yes, it is.
Can you explain to me why, if the reevaluation's being taken out? Because during your presentation, that was what was supporting the increased hours.
We took out $58,000 from our original request because we were removing the revaluation. The increase in hours is because he still has a tremendous amount of work to do to get stuff into our computer and to go out and work on the land evaluation with the gentleman that we hired, and also just to bring our records and continue on doing his job.
Right, but that particular position in last year's budget was cut from 40 to 30. Now you want to bring it back up from 30 to 40.
Yes.
My follow-up to that is you said you're taking the reevaluation out. As a town council, last fall, you held a public meeting, and you guys talked and stressed about the need for this town to be reevaluated to increase the money that we get from the state, which is supposed to help offset what we as taxpayers are supposed to have to contribute, i.e. that it was you guys told me, you spent probably 15 minutes telling me and explaining to me how my taxes should go down. Now you're taking out one of the things that should help generate some strong high revenue. I believe you were giving a 7-digit figure that we were losing in money from the state. That's a large amount of money that we're losing from the state that's going to cost us $48,000 to have the reevaluation done.
58.
Okay, 58 versus a 7-digit figure. My scale's like this. Why are we
The
not pushing to
7-digit
do that?
figure that you're referring to was over a long period of time. And the reason we pulled it out of the budget is because the council requested it to be taken out. So it is out.
Okay, give me this year's figure then. If the 7-digit figure, the $1+ million is over a graduated period of time, what did we lose in revenue this year?
I don't have those numbers here in front of me.
I'm going to reply to that because I'm one of the people that actually brought up the idea of the assessing.
Yeah.
And the idea of saying that we're taking all assessing out of the budget is kind of not accurate, because what we're doing is, what we're trying to do is actually stage through the assessing process. The first part of it, which is actually ongoing right now, which is actually what Mr. Dow is actually putting a lot of time is the property part of it. The house part of it, the actually coming in and measuring and doing the house evaluation itself, is a second series part of this assessing or the revaluation. And as a council, hopefully we're not actually talking about totally not doing it. Our hopes is to actually do the first part and do it right, along with the other personal property and a lot of the other input that we're putting into the computer, which, again, we're going from a card system to putting it into a computer, which is kind of revamping our assessing. My concern is that we actually do the first part and make sure it's actually done as accurate as we can before we move into the second part, which would probably put us beyond this year. Our hope with doing the land would actually bring us up to the point of being close to 70%. Not sure if that number is going to reach or not, which we'll try to get our numbers. It will still increase what the people get for the homestead exemption. What I found is very complicated when it comes to assessing. I really don't want to see Lisbon rush into assessing and have a lot of numbers and a lot of changes all within 1 year. And unfortunately, if you look around to other cities around us that have actually done a lot of revaluations, and I'm not saying they didn't do it right, but unfortunately it's nice to have all the information, do it one step at a time. And I really thought this year, instead of investing the extra money to have a lot of information all at one point in time, that we do the first part and do it right, and then we move on next year and hopefully be able to do the second part of it. Again, I know Steve would like to do it all one time because it would be a good plan, but I really think the way things, especially in small communities, if we can actually do the first part of it, try to make it as best we can, try to get the information, if there's any questions or any concerns from the people of Lisbon, to get those settled, and then next year move into the second part of it. It may not make a lot of sense, but I'm one of these people that kind of like to do it one step at a time and do it right versus the idea of trying to do everything at once, then look back and say we maybe should have took a little more time. It was an easy figure to look at this year. There's no question about it. The assessing went up drastically because of the part-time. I just don't know if we would have been able to do it all in this year and be able to make it work right. So seeing some of the concerns that we've had on some of the other tax issues, I'd rather just kind of go one step at a time and make it work. And that's my opinion of why we're actually pulling out this year. And I know there is a lot of work that Mr. Dow's doing even on the property side. The land, I should say. I guess keep messing up property and land. I think of property and land as being the same thing, but not the buildings, but the property itself, the land. So again, my hope is that we move through that, get it done, get it right, then move on to the second part.
So what you explained to me at the public hearing a few months ago is now different than what your stance is. Because I remember we went back and forth because I just didn't understand. You kept telling me how my taxes should go down, and I didn't quite get that whole thing. But there was also the big spiel about how this was going to help generate more revenue for our town. And right now, I mean, when I think you started out with your budget, I mean, it was like, what, 900,000 shortfall at the beginning of the budget season that we were at. So if you've got something that's going to bring in a huge amount of money and it's going to take a small amount to get to that point, I guess I don't understand why we're not looking at that. I understand your point. You want to do it right. You want to get the most bang for your buck to make sure that we're all treated equally. I get that. It just seems like a few months ago, that's not what I was told, and now that's what you guys are giving back to us when that's a huge revenue loss.
And again, as a whole, I believe it's true that you need to do a total evaluation. One of the things you have to realize, and again, it's one of those things it's tough, and I probably don't get the full grips on, is the idea of when we take our evaluation, say we're at 50 and go to 100, the town doesn't generate any more revenue for their budget if the assessment's done to the point of just bringing us up to the proper level of what our assessed value is. What actually it does is increase the amount of homestead exemption that the homeowners would get. So doing the reevaluation is not going to actually put more money in our revenue side of our budget to pay our bills. What it actually will do is actually give the homeowners more homestead exemption. When you raise your percentage up from, say, if you're at 56 up to 100%, the number that Steve was talking about, that $1 million figure that we've lost over the years, isn't town revenue, in a sense. It's more the homestead exemption that the taxpayer gets reimbursed to them. It's kind of confusing, and I'm probably kind of messing it up a little bit, but the idea of going from raising the evaluation in the homestead, that money we get in, is money that goes straight to the homeowners, not so much for our taxation to actually increase our revenues to pay bills within the town. So again, it's the reason your taxes might have went down a little bit is the idea that you would have got more money for the homestead exemption, which would actually offset your taxes a little bit.
I believe there was tree growth in there as well. That was a big area that we've had a steady decrease in money over the years, am I not?
Again, that goes by the evaluation also.
Right, but that was a huge amount that we've lost steadily over the years to where we're now at, was it a few hundred or a few thousand, where we were at a much larger amount just a few years ago?
And I believe that's kind of the same thing from what I've understood, is even the true growth isn't actually a dollar revenue for the town to expend. It's actually money that comes through the town to the property owners. So again, I mean, our intention is not the idea of losing money or losing revenue. It's the idea of, hopefully, the idea of doing the reassessment as good as we can. And again, I don't like dragging things off, but it's just my opinion that I'd like to make sure we do the first part of it right and move forward. But again, I don't think that if it was the idea of us being concerned about generating more revenue, it still would come from the taxpayers. So I mean, it's not the state that's going to give us that revenue.
You've just confused me even more again, so, all right.
It wouldn't be fair if I didn't say that the advisory board had a different opinion. We voted as a board last week to allow this to come out here, this budget as you see it. But we differed in one case, and that was that we felt that the assessment should go forward. And if it caused us excessive money at $58,000 to do it, that we take the pay raises of 1.75% and cap them at 0 this year, since we were not losing any positions in the spirit of, if you want to call it teamship or whatever. The reason we felt it should go forward, and not all of us now agree that most of us do, is that we do have to be above 70% to get tree growth reimbursement. And there is money that comes back to the town. There is money that comes back to the town municipal side against the homestead exemption as well. Although it's not nearly as much as what goes to the homeowners, it does come back to the town, does come against the municipal budget. But what I would like to stress, and one of the reasons we feel about it, is if we get a flat budget this year, an absolutely flat budget that didn't cause an increase at all, we will all, as homeowners, not property owners, as homeowners, have a tax increase because the state has capped the full homestead exemption from $13,000 to $10,000, and we only get 56% of that. So you can figure it out. It's about, on $100,000, it's about a $42 increase without an increase in budget. So if we don't make that 70% or anything above that, that's what's going to cost us. And the thought, again, about raising that and continuing that now, we're already in that process of doing the reeval. And there are some places of properties out there that have been looked at because we need to get the information, we need to put it in the computer, and we're not doing the whole thing. We need to do the whole town, to do it equitably. And that's the logic that we have to support going ahead with that at $58,000.
Okay, I just want to also add that, though, I have a different opinion, that we shouldn't be spending that money right now because there is going to be a couple of years lag time in between when we get the money to finance the reval, when it gets done, and when the state actually gives us money. So we'd be taking a hit right up front for money that we hope to get in a couple of years, and we all know how the state funds these things. So, we're spending money now when we don't have it to try to hope that it's there in the future. So that's why I can't support cutting positions or something for that.
And I'd just like to add that, when you sit up here and you look at what you want to cut, yeah, we could add that back in and then look at some more bodies too for people, to be laid off. So it's tough to make these decisions, very tough to make these decisions, and we're up here trying to weigh out what we think's best for the town at this point. So when somebody's losing their job, or it really puts you in a tough position. But I just wanted to add that in there.
Any other questions on assessing? Board of Appeals? Planning Board? Economic Development?
I got a two-part question. First, what does the last year's $58,000 buy for economic development? And what does the additional $7,000 buy for economic development this year?
The difference is, one, we have calculated in the 1.75.
What is it originally for? What do we get for $58,000 last year on the economic development?
What do you get for that? You get somebody in the office who tries to generate interest in business. They do loan, they do business counseling, they work with existing businesses, they work with new businesses that have come in to ask questions. They are doing downtown revitalization, and they've got probably anywhere from 25 to 30 volunteers who help throughout different committees. There's a committee that oversees any of the loans that come in, or somebody requesting funding from us. We have a revolving loan fund that we loan out to people, and of course they reimburse us, so it's always hopefully coming back and going back out to help businesses. So there's quite a bit that goes into that position.
So what's the 11%?
The 11%, you have a $1,500 increase in professional development that was in my budget last year. We ended up into a crunch, and the council cut it off, and I allowed that her to take money out of my budget for that. There's a just under $1,400 increase in dues that we pay to specific organizations that we belong to. We increased our postage by $700, and we increased our advertising by $500. And part of her salary comes out of, it isn't raised by taxes, it's raised through the revolving loan fund. We are allowed to charge an administration fee through that government money, federal government. So part of that salary, her salary comes out of that and doesn't come through the taxpayers. Okay?
Finance Department? Oh, Economic Development still? Okay.
You just broke down and explained to us that there was additional monies put into economic development this year that was taken out of your budget last year. Yet your budget's increased 4%, her budget's increased 11%. And I'm wondering if we aren't being unwise, I guess might be the right word right now, for spending these additional monies in, I'm not even sure exactly which ones you broke them down to, but these groups and committees and projects that she's joining, that is this the right time to be doing that? And couldn't we not be spending that increase this year and put that off at this point?
One of those increases comes from the main downtown organization, and we get quite a bit of services free. It's not free because we're paying the membership of $1,000, but we get all kinds of consulting advice from that organization that is definitely outweighs the $1,000 that we spend for that.
Just to continue on the bandwagon of economic development, I know it's an 11% increase. You've talked about that. And I understand I'm not going to be very popular with Councilor Mason because I know this is something that's near and dear to her, but right now, quite honestly, I mean, it's about the money and the figures. How many businesses new came to our town in 2009?
Do we have that number, Rosie, off the top of your head? Five new businesses.
I'd like to know what they are. And closed, right.
We can't hear you, Rosie. Can you come up to the mic?
The number that opened, there were some that opened and there were some that closed. Maria's opened, What to Wear opened, and that's still going on. The wedding shop, Ellie's Enchantment Weddings, was on Main Street. They opened, unfortunately they closed. Maria's Wool Menagerie opened, unfortunately they closed. And we also relocated Maurice Bono's business down on Main Street, which was a huge expansion, and put that back on the tax rolls as well.
And TNA.
And TNA, yep, that was the other one. And there was, I think there was one.
And the florist shop.
Oh, yes, Lisbon Falls Florist, and I'm trying to think. I thought there was one more.
Counseling service.
What's that?
The counseling service?
Service behind the town office.
Right, Marriott's, yeah.
Well-
There were quite a few openings that have happened.
I believe is equal number that opened, equally closed. In addition, we also now have movie gallery closing and a few others as well. So I guess what I'm trying to understand is a lot of the committees that are now being overseen by a salaried position used to be run and maintained and managed by volunteer positions, like the Thanksgiving dinner, like Moxie Days, like a lot of other things that are now being managed under this position. It would make one to think that there's not enough hours of work that we're now having to oversee volunteer committees. I understand that these all kind of intertwine eventually down the vine to economic development. But in reality, right now, when you're looking at money, you're looking at positions 30 within the school department alone, which far and exceeds by percentage by the town. And I understand that a position cut is a family, it's a face. I get that. But you're also looking to increase taxes, you're wanting us to accept a budget that you're putting forth behind us, and I have a real hard time swallowing right now spending an increased amount at that on economic development when right now we just don't really have an economy to develop. You don't have business, you have some small businesses coming of local people, but we don't have a big revenue of business coming in wanting to set up shop, and the equally of the ones that have set up have left. So you name off 5 or 6, but at least half of those opened and closed. And Maurice Bono, I'm sorry, he had a business here. It was on Route 9, and it moved to Main Street. So, I mean, he was already here. That's not a new business. It's an expanded one, and a very nice one at that. But I guess I don't understand why we're spending so much. And I also have an issue with a lot of the professional development lines within a lot of the different departments. Because we're continuing as taxpayers, nobody pays my continuing education because my employer recognizes that they're going to pay to educate me only to have me go off to another employer. So why are we continuing to pay? If I recall, our professional development within the town is over $30,000 in total.
Just under 30,000.
Pretty close, though, correct?
Yes, it is, yep.
That's a lot of development for employees that may or may not stay here. I guess I just don't understand why we're paying for that, but then add in the economic development piece of it? Is it not a time that we should be looking at this as being more part-time, or if at all, and why the town manager can't handle some of the things that are coming in? This is an awful lot of money that's not generating it back into the town. And I don't expect it to be popular. It's not about a popularity contest. I really don't care. It's just about trying to understand these figures when you're looking to fixed income taxpayers to pay more.
May
Go
I
ahead.
say something?
I expected you would.
Oh, yes, you did, I'm
Go
sure.
ahead.
Do you know anything about the downtown network, Michelle?
We're not Bath, and yes, I do understand it because I have heard it at some of the meetings.
Have you come
but-
to any of our meetings? Any of our downtown meetings?
No, because right now, we don't have a real downtown to develop right now.
Well, that's the whole idea of the downtown network, and if you weren't so negative about the whole program, you would have taken the time to come and understand. It's a nationwide program that I think almost 2,500 towns and cities have used across the nation. No, we are not Bath, no, we are not Rockland, but we could be maybe a Waterville, or we could be maybe, I think, Gardner, something like that. There are several other towns, and I don't have them right off the top of my head. But are you a business owner? Do you own a business? Do you understand about business development, Michelle?
Oh, I do, and I keep my
Do
money
you own a
within the
business?
town. No, I don't, and I
You
don't have
don't?
to have a comment because I'm a tax-paying citizen, so you don't need to call me negative, Counselor Mason. I was giving my opinion and asking questions, and I expected you to get very defensive
I
about
think
it.
you've been asked several times, and I've asked at many council meetings for folks to come to the meetings, and I've been told by several that it's useless, you don't need to go because it's not accomplishing anything. But the sad thing is, it is accomplishing a lot, and it is a proven program. As a matter of fact, we have a conference coming up in June, which is very well attended by people all across the state. And if we continue to not develop business in this town, business will not come to this town. And the theory of the downtown program is to get complementary businesses to come to your town. Bono's is a big draw for our town. The Moxie store is a big draw for our town. Our thing in the downtown network is to get complementary businesses to come. And if you look at what is proven and you look at what is successful, you'll see that that is what has happened in other towns. It didn't happen overnight, and anybody that's been involved in an economic development situation, a merchants program, a Rotary, any type of committees that organize and help a town to grow, I'm sure that they can tell you it doesn't happen overnight. My family's been in business for many, many years, and I know that sometimes when times are tough, that's the time that you need to get back to basics and learn to grow your business in your town. So I do invite you to come to our meetings. We have several committees that are established right now. We have the downtown conference in June, and I do hope that you would come to some of those and you would see what we are accomplishing, because there are people that have been in business in this community for 35, 40 years that are very involved in that, and they feel it's a very positive thing, so.
That I can respect that, but the negative comments you were talking about, you've never heard come from my mouth. I've never said them. So that was taken out of context from other people. My issue is right now, and I understand that it's a domino effect and it can take years to see what the work comes. I just don't think right now, based on the economy, that it's the time, and why you can't look at something more part-time. There are committees that she's on right now that I don't think we need to be paying a position to maintain.
The turkey dinner doesn't come out of the budget because there is no budget for the turkey dinner. The turkey dinner was paid for by donations throughout the town. So you guys, you
I
brought
didn't say
that.
she paid for it. She
No, but you
oversaw it.
Which is
That's
fine. There were
time of
several others that
salary.
also oversaw
Right.
it. But
Right.
what I'm trying to say is there is no money that comes out of her budget for that.
I never indicated there was, but that's part of her salary and her hours that we're paying for.
Your 3 minutes is up.
That's fine.
You may make one quick comment.
I just want to comment on economic development. Being in business all my life and my family, especially in the downturn of economics, right now is the time to position yourself for future growth. If we didn't have somebody planning, and we can go on like Campus Street, that building, that's going to be producing lots of revenue that was put together. You've got the Arundel Mill that the RFP has gone out for investors to look at that. That's all done by economic development. Longchamps, down the road with that, you have to always have somebody working every single lead you can get with economic development. You have to have somebody staffed all the time. Look at all the revolving loans that have been approved since Rosie's been here that have loaned money to businesses to keep them in business, to open businesses. That's ongoing, constantly ongoing. She is taking applications for businesses so that they can survive or open. So we've got to have economic development at all times, or we will pay down the road. It's a long-term plan. It's a long-term investment. And if we try to do otherwise, your tax revenues will drop or they won't increase. And when you got increases in salaries and insurances and expenses every single year, the only way you can counter that is by revenue. And we got to find ways to bring revenue in. That's what I got to say on that.
Okay, any different questions on economic development? Okay. Finance Department. Tax Department. Town Clerk. Police Department. Animal Control.
Yes, I'd like to know what the $5,000 represents, the increase, and does this represent a salary for an animal control officer, or what does it represent?
It represents a 1.75 increase in the salary line. It also represents an increase in the medical insurance. It's an increase in workman's comp, and it's an increase in gas. And keep in mind that on this animal control, we split the cost between 3 communities, Lisbon, Sabattis, and Bowdoin, and we actually have a 4th community who has asked us to put together a proposal which will drive all of our costs down.
So in effect, the $66,000 represents a 3-way split on an employee?
Yes. Not a perfect 3-way split.
Right, but, and that $66,000 is not only salary, but benefit, insurance, workers' comp, and all that?
And it also, for us, it includes, each town pays a separate amount for the Humane Society. We currently house any animals we take in through Mr. Ford. Some of the other communities have to locate them in county Humane Society facilities, which eventually we see coming, which will cost us dearly. It will go up. We're getting a good deal.
So the 66, I mean, if you just roughly look at it, just in the roughest context, how much of that would you say would be salary?
Out of that 66, $30,826 is a salary with a 1.75 increase.
So he gets $30,000 from each town, or?
No, he gets $30,000 total.
So we pay his whole salary and these services to other towns?
No, we don't pay his whole salary. They reimburse us for their expenses.
So we lay out for his whole salary, and then the other 2 towns kick us back?
Reimburse us, yes.
Okay, communications?
I'd just like to ask, what is that?
Communications is our dispatch center.
And am I right, this was actually part of the police budget last year, and now it's been pulled out as a separate line?
Correct.
So if you add that to this year's police budget, it actually makes the figure $1,163,043?
Correct.
So it's an increase of like 20,000?
20,000, based on salaries. Communications budget was pulled out separately due to all of the committees and discussions that have been going on within the state and Androscoggin County to consolidate our communications departments. So we felt it was time to pull that out. Should any consolidation ever take place, we would know our exact cost and what impact it would have on the community. Fire Department. Town Engineer. Public Works. Public Works Winter. Transfer and Recycling. Hydrant rentals. Streetlights. Parks Department. Conservation Commission. Recreation Department. Library Department.
Going so fast, you have to run down here. Just a quick clarification. The Library Department's gone down 11%, which I really hope means that you are not cutting any of their hours, because I can barely get there on Saturday as it is. But how is it possibly that it can go down when I think your little chart that came up there said that the library's use increased 50%?
Yes. They're seeing more people on a regular basis. We have decreased their budget. They are losing a full-time or a full-time, part-time person that works. She's relocating, and we're filling that with 2 part-time people for less hours. She also, she makes a lot of cuts, but let me just find out exactly what that is. She has decreased her mileage. She represents the state of Maine in the Library Association, and they pay for some of her mileage, so she's cut back on her mileage. She also has cut back on her professional development, because some of that gets paid. Postage has dropped down. And her repair and maintenance on equipment has dropped down. So she's made some very healthy and good decisions to maintain the hours and staffing.
And just to be clear, the 30-hour position is being cut. 2 15-hour people are moving into that, but we are losing the 1 15-hour position.
Yes, you are, yep.
Okay, Health Officer, Community Services, Miscellaneous Public Services, General Assistance, County Tax, Abatements, Debt Service, Other. Other is a reduction we took for the 53rd week. In this pay period, the auditors account for it on an annual basis, so we didn't have to actually budget for it. It's a paper adjustment that's done through the annual audit. Okay, well, I want to thank everybody for coming and appreciate all your input. And again, there will be another public hearing on May 11th due to our need to follow our charter and have everything posted correctly, so we can do this again on the 11th if there's additional questions or anything. Thank you.
At this high school, we've only put $50,000, a little over $50,000 into the high school, and you would be surprised at how visible the places that we've made those changes, how many comments, positive comments that we've heard from people. So we do have a limited budget, I agree. And we are, as a committee, I mean, we come from every different angle. We're doing the best we can, but that's why we're hoping to use existing money to get more done, because, you know, realistically, we may not be approved for a building project, and the town has already told us that we're not in a position to pay for a project on their own.
Right. Apparently, with the new elementary school, the older ones must have been worse than the high school. Is that why the elementary school was made before anything with the high school?
At the time that we applied for the elementary schools as well as the high school, both applications went in. The state determines which facility
Sure.
needs to be replaced, so that's why the elementary schools were merged into one building, is that is what the state
Now, was that
gave
because
on
of
the
the
list.
buildings themselves were
Yes.
too, okay, that's what I was wondering about
Yeah,
that.
that's what, they go, just like they will in the summer, they'll come through the building, rate them,
Right.
and then it goes on a list for however many applications came in, and
And
each has a point system.
Okay. Does that go with where you were saying that, I think it was Mr. Green was saying that for 20 years we've putting in an application?
Yep, we've
And
been
why
putting in
has nothing
applications.
ever been, I mean, I don't understand, for 20 years we've tried.
From the state level, or
Right.
from the state level, what the state does is when you open up applications, any school in the entire state can do it.
Right.
What they haven't been really good at is those states who really need it, they don't freeze the list
Right.
and work their way up, they reopen it to everybody. There were talks prior to February that they were going to do that, and we were 7th the last go-round, that they were going to freeze the list and then work away from there. But then they told us that they didn't have any money, and now with the federal stimulus money, they're putting in, and that's an important piece of information, they're only putting in $120 million for this state application round.
Right, and that's for all
which
the
doesn't
schools,
seem,
right?
it's not a lot. It seems like a lot to me, because 120 million is a lot. But as far as, I think the average cost of building a brand-new high school is what, 60, is it 25? Thought it was
Million?
more towards 40. So that's not very many projects. And some projects are also looking at including, up in, I think, the Rockland area, vocational centers, like
Right.
colleges, too. So that's not a lot of money to give out.
Because
but
it
we're-
is for the whole state, correct?
Because it is for the whole state, but we're hoping that we are going to be shovel-ready, and they'll notice that we want to renovate rather than build new, so they're,
Right. Well, it's good to know that you've been at them, because apparently, in some ways, it has worked. It's made them stop to a point and realize that they've got to stop at a point and look through what really needs to be done compared to just going, oh, sure, we'll give this guy money and this guy money
they
and
didn't
whatever.
freeze, I don't want to, they did not freeze the
Oh, they
list.
did not?
They did not freeze
I
the
thought you said
list.
did, I'm sorry.
No, were talks about it, but they did not choose to do so.
I guess, geez, I don't know. Is it any good to call or write our senators or anything? I mean, it's so hard because I realize we can only do so much as a community and even as a school. But I mean, this is just ridiculous.
For someone that has written our U.S. Congressman,
Several
and I have written those letters, and I was laughed at by my former English teacher, and I just got generic responses
Right.
back.
And I unfortunately assume that. The bond, I guess the last question I have really is, the bond that we did vote on last year was the 500,000 one. Wasn't that supposed to be for the school, but it was said it was for something else?
The school committee was recommending that we had gone to propose that we do a locally funded high school. And to do so, we asked for $500,000 to get all the work done from nuts to bolts.
Just for the high school, you mean, though?
For a new high school, whether it's renovation or construction, we were looking to ask the town to start that process with that $500,000 to fund it ourselves. And that was obviously voted down. Richard Main has something to add.
Yes, I've heard over a number of years that there weren't things done to the school because they were always in hopes of next year getting on the list and being approved. Well, when that question came up during our facilities meeting just recently, the facilities committee said, no, these issues are too critical to wait until maybe. And even though we would not get reimbursed for the monies in the bond as a community, we have determined that those issues are important enough to do it with the existing monies, as Mr. Green has explained, and not wait for someday later on when the roses might be blooming.
Especially when it's already been 2 decades, so I can understand that, which is great. I'm very glad to hear that what money we do have, we are putting to use ourselves, because that is also showing them, the state or the government, that we're going to do it no matter what, because we give a crap.
Richard brings up another point. What has happened in the past, too, I don't think it was ever kind of said that they frowned upon improvements, but we've been told, I went to a conference, school board conference, and Superintendent Green went to his school board, his superintendent conference, and the message was that any renovations done to a building will not hurt you on the state application. So that was good news as well for us moving forward.
But so mainly it's just the state and their mess up.
Thank you.
Sounds all right, thank you.
Hi, Ryan Booker. I graduated from Lisbon in 1997. I got 3 kids, and hopefully they'll come here too. I just had a couple quick questions. One, we're currently on probation. Is there a time frame that we have to show considerable improvement to the school before we're not accredited, or they take us off probation, or?
We have to do, Mr. Healy might be able to speak on this, but we have to submit reports, and those are available. You'll see the different communications between NEASC and the high school online.
Is there a defined time where we could eventually go from probation to losing our accreditation? There's not a defined time, but if the community does not step and do at least small incremental improvements to this building, that's when we'll get the tag. One of the things is for accreditation, it's every 10 years, and what we are doing is we're coming up on our 5-year report. And that's really the crisis that we're in right now. We're coming up to that magical 5 years. If you haven't done anything, you haven't got a funded project to improve the building, that's when they'll start to question whether you guys meaning the community and the building and the school, whether you have the will to improve the facility. So we have every 10 years, in 5 more years, we're going to be accredited. They'll come again. If we haven't lost it completely, they'll come out and reassess us. If in fact we have made those improvements, either through a renovation or upgrades, slow upgrades, we can ask them to come out sooner, and hopefully they'll get us an improved status. But there's not a defined time. As long as we're making slow, incremental improvements, they're very likely to keep us on probation. They'll take us off probation and lose our accreditation if we do nothing. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Yeah.
It does, thank you. Another one, you talked about getting rid of the lease of the modulars to help pay for the bond. Is there enough current room in the high school without the modulars to accommodate the children that would not be in the modulars?
Well, currently, there's not enough room, but what we would have to do internally is, and we do this already, we have teachers who do not have their own room. They share classrooms. The engineers had mentioned that the model private schools, teachers bounce back and forth. We just feel, as a committee, and I think as a community, that spending $21,000 a year on a lease, when we can turn it into something else and maybe, do some changes internally, that's more beneficial. So short term, there is from 5th grade down, there's a pretty consistent number of kids, and I feel, and I've talked to the school committee, that enrollments until that 5th grade class, is sophomores, juniors, the high school population is going to go up. This year, I think it's down 10, 15. It's going to go up 20 next year, then it'll go down 20. We feel that it'll be 5, 6 years before we have a real issue, as long as the enrollments are sustained in that 5th grade, 4th grade, 3rd grade, 2nd grade, etc. But that is just one of the sacrifices that we'll have to make, and we will, unfortunately, teachers will have to share classrooms and may not have their own space, but that is the way it is right now, and it's not a popular, it probably won't be very popular, but it's something that we'll have to do.
Okay. And just one other quick one. Now, you talked about the crack in the wall down in the cafeteria area. Now, the Association of Schools and Colleges said that that was a problem and it was a major issue. Would a recommendation from one of your firms, would that satisfy them, that crack? You said it's been repaired and painted, but did they see that crack as a bigger issue?
Yeah.
Yes, I agree that, I think that if we did that, we've already worked about the cafeteria size, that's one of the NEAS things, and Steve's actually worked on that, and that issue is kind of washed away. I believe you're absolutely correct that we could do that, and that would be, we can essentially make that go away, so.
Okay.
This is kind of a related topic. Another thing on the NEAS report was your cafeteria is too small, requiring 3 lunch periods, which interrupts the student schedule. But the 3 lunch periods is actually the state standard, and we've already talked with NEASC, and they've agreed that if that's the state standard, it can be acceptable with them, and they'll take that off the list.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sylvia White. I've lived in Lisbon all my life. My husband too. He coaches here at the high school, and we have 3 girls currently in the school system. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Okay, thanks. Again, I'm Sylvia White, and I'm a member of the town of Lisbon, as well as my husband. Our 3 children are here in the school system, and my husband coaches at the high school. I guess as far as being on probation, once we have these short-term goals in place and they hear that we're working with the firm and they said the crack is okay and that the 3 lunch periods are okay, will that take us off probation or after long-term goals?
I think Tim says it the best, is that when we're dealing with the NEASC report, it's kind of a moving target. And they came and visited and picked out a few other things that they've added. The letters and the reports, it's not like the list stays the same all the time, and that's what we kind of found, and it's very frustrating. I don't know what it would take to take us off probation, but I feel that the work that we have done in the last few months and the work that we will continue to do is significant enough to assure us that we're not going to be we're not going to lose our accreditation. We may not get off probation. I know that there is at least one school in the state of Maine that's been on probation for over 6 years, I believe. We may not get off probation until we do some major renovations, but I know that Mr. Healy spoke with the representative from NEASC just a few days ago, and they were very happy to hear the work that we've been doing and the potential of the work that we could do.
The $350,000 bond plus the stimulus money plus the money we have in our budget over the 10 years, will that will cover everything? The new gym? No. That's just the short-term goals. Okay.
I asked the engineers to specifically to stay away from any type of quotes, to give us hard, not rounded up numbers, 250,000, 500,000. I'd like to know exactly what it would cost. Probably our last couple of meetings, we went from, the possibility, thinking that what we could get for 700,000, but when you really look hard at it, it actually came out to 1.5 million, and that's just for, some small renovations. We believe, priority-wise, we have set short-term priorities, and we talked about the north side of the building, the main entrance. Now, we feel we can do that with existing money, the stimulus money we have now and existing money. What we're hoping for is to have the additional 350,000 so that we can do something, whether it's with the south side windows or heating units,